The monarchy survived wars, scandals, abdications, and decades of public pressure. But according to a shocking new royal biography, there was one thing Queen Elizabeth II could no longer trust in the final years of her life: private conversations with her own grandson. And once you hear why, you'll never look at the royal family the same way again. Because this is not internet gossip. This is not a tabloid headline designed to shock you for clicks. This comes from one of the most respected royal historians alive. A man who spent decades around the royal household. A man who personally met Queen Elizabeth more than 40 times. A man trusted by the institution itself. And what he revealed is quietly devastating. According to the new biography Queen Elizabeth II, A Personal History by royal historian Hugo Vickers, the late Queen would not speak to Prince Harry on the telephone unless another person was physically present in the room with her. Let that sink in. The most experienced monarch in modern history. A woman who ruled for more than 70 years. A grandmother who once adored Harry. Felt the need to have a witness nearby every time he called. Not for comfort. For protection. According to the book, Queen Elizabeth asked her lady-in-waiting to remain with her during those conversations so there would always be a record of what was said. And suddenly, everything about the final years of the royal family starts to make horrifying sense. Because this wasn't paranoia. It was caution built from experience. Before we go deeper, you need to understand why this book matters so much. Hugo Vickers is not a celebrity commentator chasing viral headlines. He's one of the most revered private conversations could later become public content. Back in 2020 during the Sandringham Summit, the crisis meeting over Harry and Meghan's departure from royal life, reports emerged claiming Meghan Markle was not placed on speakerphone because there were concerns conversations could be recorded or later reused publicly. At the time, those claims were mocked. People called them conspiracy theories. But then came the Netflix documentaries. The interviews. The memoir. Private texts. Family conversations. Internal moments once considered sacred suddenly became global entertainment. And with hindsight, those earlier fears no longer seem crazy. They seem logical. That is what makes the Queen's behavior so revealing. According to Vickers, when Harry called, the Queen became extremely restrained. Palace sources described the conversations as painfully short. Mostly one-word responses. Yes. No. That was it. Imagine what that says emotionally. This was not just a monarch managing a public crisis. This was a grandmother speaking carefully to someone she once loved deeply because trust had collapsed so completely she no longer felt safe having unwitnessed conversations. That is tragic. But it's also incredibly telling. And the caution didn't stop there. In 2022, when Harry and Meghan Markle brought their daughter to meet the Queen at Windsor Castle, another lady-in-waiting was reportedly present in the room. Even more interesting? The Queen declined requests for a professional photographer. Think about that. A great-grandmother meeting her great-grandchild should be one of the most joyful private moments imaginable. Yet Queen Elizabeth reportedly worried about how images could later be used. That single decision speaks volumes. Because by then, according to this account, the Queen had learned something painful. Nothing involving the Sussexes stayed private for long. And then comes perhaps the sharpest revelation in the entire book. According to Vickers, Queen Elizabeth privately said this about Harry's new life in California. And now Harry has opted out, and for what? To be a carer for Archie. That sentence is brutal in its simplicity. Not angry. Not emotional. Just quietly devastating. Because Queen Elizabeth dedicated every single day of her life to duty. The crown came before comfort. Before privacy. Before personal happiness. And from her perspective, Harry walked away from that life entirely. The Queen reportedly advised Harry to wait before marrying Meghan. King Charles reportedly urged caution too. And Prince Philip, known for his famously blunt personality, allegedly referred to Meghan simply as the American. The warnings were there early. But Harry moved ahead anyway. Now, to be fair, Buckingham Palace declined to comment on the book, which is standard procedure. The Sussexes' representatives also chose not to respond publicly. So viewers should keep that balance in mind. But the source here matters. This isn't anonymous gossip. This is one of the most connected royal historians alive documenting what he believes truly happened behind palace walls. And what emerges is a picture of trust slowly disintegrating. Not overnight, but piece by piece. The Queen's caution reportedly spread through the family itself. Reports claimed that King Charles and Prince William also preferred not to meet Harry alone anymore. Witnesses were present. Staff remained nearby. Again, not necessarily because anyone expected immediate betrayal, but because once private family conversations become global headlines, people naturally become careful. And Queen Elizabeth, above all else, was careful. That's the key to understanding her final years. She wasn't simply acting like a wounded grandmother. She was acting like a monarch protecting the institution she spent 70 years preserving. According to Vickers, when difficult situations landed on her desk, the Queen reportedly asked herself one question. What should the Queen do? Not what she personally wanted. Not what emotionally felt best. What the crown required. That distinction defined her life. And it explains why, even in deeply painful family situations, duty always won. But there's another major revelation in this biography that deserves attention. Because recently, some writers have suggested Queen Elizabeth mentally declined near the end of her life. Vickers strongly rejects that narrative. And the evidence supporting him is powerful. Just 2 days before her death, the Queen formally appointed Liz Truss as Prime Minister at Balmoral. Truss later insisted publicly that the Queen remained mentally sharp during the entire meeting. Frailly or physically? Yes. Mentally diminished? Absolutely not. And Vickers agrees completely. He even recounts a moment from the Queen's final full evening alive. After meeting both outgoing Prime Minister Boris Johnson and incoming Prime Minister Liz Truss in one day, the Queen reportedly joked to her racing manager, "I've had revolving doors with prime ministers all morning." That line matters. Because it shows wit, timing, awareness. A woman fully present mentally. Not someone fading away. Vickers himself visited her in June 2022 and described her as bright as a button. Sharp memory. Sharp humor. Fully engaged. And that matters because history gets rewritten quietly. One dramatic claim repeated enough times eventually becomes accepted truth. Vickers clearly believes that narrative about the Queen mentally declining is inaccurate. And he's pushing back hard. Now here's where the story takes another shocking turn. Because Vickers also reveals something deeply personal about Prince Philip. According to him, Philip nearly sued Netflix over The Crown. Not because of affair rumors. Not because of gossip. But because of how the show portrayed one of the most traumatic moments of his life. Back in 1937, Philip's beloved sister Cecily died in a horrific plane crash along with multiple family members, including her unborn child. It devastated him. According to Vickers, The Crown dramatically altered the story for emotional effect, inventing scenes implying Philip was somehow connected to the tragedy. And Philip reportedly found that deeply cruel. Vickers later publicly corrected the story during a BBC interview. And remarkably, Philip himself was apparently listening. According to Vickers, the Duke had already spoken with lawyers about possible legal action. That tells you how seriously he took it. Because beneath Philip's tough public image was someone profoundly affected by family loyalty and personal truth. And honestly, some of the most moving stories in this book are about him. Vickers describes Philip as highly intelligent, strategic, and deeply underrated. A man who worked tirelessly behind the scenes without demanding attention. And perhaps the most emotional story involves Harry and William after the death of Diana, Princess of Wales. The boys reportedly did not want to walk behind their mother's coffin. Understandably. But Philip gently told them something they would remember forever. "You will regret it later if you don't." And then he added, "I'll walk with you." And he did. No cameras for sympathy. No public performance. Just a grandfather standing beside two grieving boys. Ironically, those same boys would eventually grow into men standing on opposite sides of one of the greatest royal fractures in modern history. And maybe that's what makes this entire story so sad. Because underneath the headlines, the interviews, the documentaries, and the global arguments, there was still a family. A grandmother trying to protect herself. A monarchy trying to survive. And a relationship that slowly broke apart under pressure the entire world could watch in real time. By the end of her life, Queen Elizabeth remained exactly who she had always been. Disciplined. Careful. Focused on duty above everything else. Even during grief. Even during betrayal. Even during heartbreak. That's the portrait Hugo Vickers ultimately paints. Not a perfect woman. Not a cold woman. But a deeply intelligent monarch who understood that words matter, trust matters, and once private things become public weapons, nothing inside a family ever feels truly safe again. And maybe that's the most devastating part of all. Because the Queen spent her entire life protecting the crown from outside threats. Yet in her final years, according to this account, the danger she feared most came from inside the family itself. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Queen Elizabeth was justified in becoming so cautious with Harry and Meghan? Or do you think the royal family overreacted and pushed them away even further? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden realities behind the monarchy, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the stories the palace never wanted fully understood are only just beginning to surface.